Is Americas the worst region in Valorant right now? And why is it the case? Well, you might ask me, why is Americas the worst region? And let me tell you, if you look here, 4 of the 12 teams in Americas haven't won yet in the group stage. 0 wins. They've got 1 map for 3 of them and 0 for Envy. I mean, Envy are genuinely terrible. These guys are pretty much a tier 3 team at this point. And even Loud and EG, I'd say, are both pretty terrible teams, to be honest. The only competitive teams in Americas right now are these top 6 teams, Lev, NRG, MIBR, G2, Sen, and 100 Thieves. Apart from them 6, genuinely there's no chance that the other teams make it to an international. Like, literally 0% chance. They're that bad. And when you go and compare it to these other regions, EMEA, 1 team doesn't have a win. Pacific, 1 team doesn't have a win. China, 1 team doesn't have a win, and they finished this, by the way. This is fully finished now. So these other 2 regions could still get a win for RRQ, which is pretty likely. Maybe Pacific, not as likely. But even so, it just shows the competitiveness is way, way closer in these other regions. And I mean, even if you just look, no team's flawless in the EU. Only 1 team is flawless in Pacific, and only 1 team was flawless in China. Americas, 4 flawless teams currently, and I know they're a tiny bit behind, but I believe it'll stay that way anyway, and the only losses they'll get will be to the other teams in their group. But it kind of just shows that this region has 0 competitiveness, and I'll sort of break down the reasons behind it and why I believe that the lack of competitiveness in this region is causing them to be by far the worst region. I think the best way to get it to look into why Americas is doing so poorly is to look at the beginning, look at the sort of grassroots of it, and sort of see where the issue begins. And here's the main issue at the grassroots level, at least. In North America, there's currently around 6,000 players in Immortal, and they struggle to fill Radiant every season. Radiant barely gets filled every season. I don't think it's even full right now, and it's like been like weeks and weeks into the season. And then it's the same if you go to Brazil. Only like 5,000 Radiants in Brazil. Latin America, it's around the same, even less. So it just kind of shows like the lack of competitiveness in North and South America. I mean, South America is kind of different because they have more subregions, but especially in North America, how have they only got 5,000 Immortals? And just to compare this to another region, if you go look at Europe, Europe has almost maybe over 20,000. That's 4 times more Immortals playing in Europe than there are in NA. And also, Radiant is highly competitive in Europe. It subsedes the threshold to hit Radiant every season, whereas Americas barely meets the threshold. And I think that kind of just shows the sort of core of the issue, that there's no players coming up in Americas that are actually competing to a decent level, because just think about it, it's just a numbers game. If you have 20,000 players who are Immortal, that's 20,000 more people that could possibly end up going pro. Whereas in Americas, there's only 5,000 Immortals, and you've got to think very, very few Immortals ever go pro. So the number of actual players going pro in Americas every year is just extremely, extremely low compared to the other regions like EU and Pacific, who just have way, way more players coming in. And I mean China now especially as well. China's got a massive influx of players and fans. So you can see why China are slowly getting way, way better, and America's is getting way, 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 way worse as time goes on. To kind of expand off of the previous point as well, as you take that to the next step in terms of tier 2 going to tier 1 instead of sort of ranked player to tier 2, you can look at the regions here, and if you look at Americas right now, all of these teams have so many recycled players, it is unreal. Like, almost every player in every team is a player who's just been on another team in tier 1 in NA and then has got passed along. I mean, look at this Furia squad, for example. Every single one of these players was on a different team to just get recycled into a new one. Same here on Crew. Same here, I mean, Cloud9, like, perfect example of this. Obviously, Fireball Ups is new. They do have a few tier 2 players coming up, but the problem is I don't think they've sort of understood yet that if you bring up players as a team and you build them together, they actually perform well. Because when you look at Leviathan, for example, they've brought up a lot of new players apart from King, and they've performed well because they've worked with them and they've pushed them to play well together. Whereas these teams at the bottom, it feels like they're just trying to save money. Like, it genuinely feels like the teams at the top, they know they're good, they're playing well, they're going to invest in their players so they can do well. But these teams at the bottom, Cloud9, Envy, it just looks like they've given up. They don't want to put too much more money into it, so they just pick up whichever player doesn't want to get picked up by anyone else, give them a small little contract, the minimum that they can give them, save their money, and just wait out the season, because they know they've lost. all these teams at the bottom, these bottom six teams, they don't care. They just pick up whoever's not on a team, say, oh, well, we'll give you the minimum salary. We're not going to pay you any more than that. And they just, oh, well, fuck it. We'll lose this season. It's okay. Whereas these top upper teams, the ones that are actually performing well, they bring in players that they actually believe in. They actually like work towards trying to get to be better players. Like, for example, Timotino, Vora, Leviathan, all their players. And these are the teams that are succeeding in NA. So and Americas. So I don't know why Americas kind of hasn't caught onto the fact that maybe you should bring up tier 2 players and tier 2 talent. And maybe the issue is they don't have the tier 2 talent, as I was previously explaining. And there's just a lack of it due to the lack of players in Americas. But either way, it just seems like a lack of thought, and it just seems like 6 teams trying to save money and just sort of camping and franchising, and then 6 teams actually trying to go to internationals. And kind of the outcome of that is, because these teams at the bottom aren't investing and aren't putting money to try and improve their teams and to try and make their teams better all time, the teams at the top aren't getting good practice. In these other regions, like EMEA, for example, even the top teams, like Team Vitality, they came 3rd in the last international. They've got world level players, right? But even the teams they're playing against, like the teams, like for example, Na'Vi here, like they can have close games against these teams. Look, 2-1, Na'Vi won a map off, and these guys are second bottom in their group. You know, all these teams compete against each other and push each other to be better. I mean, this group Omega, I genuinely think any one of these teams could end up qualifying to an international out of here. Maybe not Giant X, but all these other teams could qualify to an international, and they could look like it, right? And that means the other teams are pushed to play better. The sort of pressure on their players and the pressure on their orgs to compete is way, way higher because they need to fight to get these spots. So even though you do maybe have 6 teams who won't go and 6 teams who will go, the 6 teams at the bottom push the 6 teams at the top to perform better. So when they do go to the international, they're going to perform better than these Americas teams who have basically had no competition. Like, do you think Lev have got competition to go to the international? No, they don't care. Like, these guys aren't being pushed to play to a high level. I mean, I'm sure they wish they would, and I'm sure they practice hard, but it's just not the same as actually having the pressure on you. Like, you could not go to this international if you don't work hard enough. And that's how it is in EMEA right now. Any of these teams could flop and not go to the international. Like, if you fall off a tiny bit in EMEA, you cannot go to an international. That's how competitive it is compared to Americas. And kind of another impact of that is on the players, is they're not worried about their spots because there's so little competitiveness and there's so little sort of drive from these orgs to get better players that, for example, players on Cloud9 here, all these guys aren't forced to play better, you know, like they don't care, they're getting a paycheck, and at the end of the day, who are they going to get replaced by? Because they'll just get picked up by another trash team in Americas anyway. And it's the same with the top teams and the bottom teams. There's such a little amount of players who push each other in Americas. It feels like they're basically all just sat there for a paycheck, I'll be honest. Apart from the few top teams who are actually got a serious hope of doing well in an international, like Leviathan, maybe 100 Thieves, maybe NRG, these teams will invest, but all the others, it kind of just seems like the players are going to get picked up by someone else. They're not forced to play well. It's not like there's players who are going to come in and take their spot, which is the case in EMEA. If you fall off in EMEA, you will get dropped because it's that competitive, and that's just the main difference. And it just sort of summarizes why the whole of Americas is doing so poorly and why they can't compete well at internationals. I mean, apart from Leviathan, and they're kind of stuck with like a 2-team region. Like, they only really have two good teams at a time, and in its isolation as an Americas, why would anyone watch this? Why would anyone want to watch these games? Who's going to watch Cloud900 Thieves? Because you already know the result. You don't have to watch it. Same with Envy Leviathan, you know, it's an irrelevant game. No one cares. Like, it doesn't mean anything because these guys are so bad. It's not even worth watching. You could genuinely guess the outcome. I mean, if you're betting on Valorant, I mean, have your will with it. I mean, it's free money at that point. Whereas EMEA, I mean, it's way more interesting. Someone that actually can watch this and it'd be interesting. There's close games, there's stuff like this. It's like in the future, I think Americas is just going to die. The players are going to keep getting worse. The teams are going to keep getting worse. And regions like China and Pacific are going to just keep getting better and better because of the amount of players they're bringing in.